All right, this is first grading period benchmark review C for Algebra 4.0 and 5.0. And this particular handout looks like this. It starts out with Infinite Algebra 1 multi-step inequalities. Okay, and here's the first inequality, and I've rewritten it over here so we can see it a little bit better. 3 is less than negative 5n plus 2n. I put my fish hooks on my line, and I'm going to put my random rule down here. So no distributive property, can't combine like terms, don't need to get all my, oh, I do need to combine like terms. Silly. I need to combine this and this. N's want to hang with other n's, and negative n's for sure want to hang with positive n's. Oh yeah. So if I have 5 negative n's and 2 positive n's, I have more negatives than positives. I have 3 extra n's without a partner, and that is going to be 3 on this side. If I want to get n alone, I'm going to divide by negative 3. And don't forget that random rule. If you multiply or divide both sides of an inequality by a negative number, you have to reverse the inequality symbol. So we're going to do this. So we have n here, and we have a positive 3 divided by a negative 3. 3 over 3 is 1. A positive divided by a negative is a negative 1. Well, that's fabulous, but remember we talked about graphing inequalities, and it's better when the variable's on the left-hand side, because then the arrow will go the same direction in the symbol and on the graph. So I'm going to put the n here and the negative 1 over here, and even though we flipped it up here because of the random rule, we're going to flip it back again, because when I flip over an inequality, I also have to flip the symbol. So now we're back to less than, n is less than negative 1. And when I graph this, I'm going to begin at negative 1. This would be 0, this would be 1, this would be negative 2. I'm going to start at negative 1, and it's going to be an open dot because n cannot be equal to negative 1. It can only be less than negative 1, and everything less than negative 1 is going to go this way. And since the n is on the left-hand side, it's just kind of convenient to notice that this arrow and this arrow should go the same direction. All right, number 2 is 6x plus 2 plus 6x is less than 14. Put your line. Going to go fishing for some random rule. Okay, don't need to distribute. I need to combine this with this, and I get 12 positive x's, and I'm going to bring down my positive 2 is less than 14. I want 12x alone, so I'm going to subtract 2 from both sides. The 2's cancel out. 12x is less than 14 minus 2 is 12. If I divide both sides by 12, I get x is less than 1. I don't have to flip my inequality because I did not multiply or divide by a negative number. My variable's on the left-hand side. I begin at 1 on the graph. It's open because it's not equal to 1. It's only less than 1. It's going to go left, just like this. Alrighty then, number 3. Negative p minus 4p is greater than negative 10. Be darned. Fish hooks. Don't forget the random rule. Okay, I need to, oh, I can combine these. This is confusing sometimes. How many negative p's is this? It's 1 negative p, isn't it? And this is 4 negative p's. Well, how many stinking negative p's is that altogether? Nobody's getting married, so that's 5 negative p's, and on the right we have negative 10. And if I want to get p alone, I'm going to divide both sides by -5. And if I divide both sides of an inequality by a negative number, the random rule says flip it, flip it, flip it. So I'm going to flip it. Negative divided by a negative is a +2. I'm going to begin graphing this at +2. My circle is going to be open because it can't be equal to 2. It can only be less than 2. Gosh, everything's less than so far. And no solid dots. That's crazy. All right, number 4 is, man, my hand gets tired when I hold this thing. I got to figure out a better way. Number 4 is 18 is greater than or equal to 5k plus 4k. Oh, this is going to be so easy. Line, fish hooks, RR, random rule. Little reminder there. These are like terms. I'm going to combine them. Those are 9 positive k's, no negative k's to partner up with. Divide both sides by a +9, which means I'm not going to flip my symbol. And that means k goes here and 2 goes here. But remember, when we're going to graph this little guy, we like to have our variable on the left. So we're going to go ahead and turn the whole thing over. And if I turn the whole thing over, I have to turn the symbol over as well. I'm going to start graphing at 2. It's going to be a solid dot because this says not only can k be less than 2, it can be equal to 2. And that solid dot says, oh yes, it can be 2. And in addition, it can be anything less than 2. All right, number 5. 9 is greater than or equal to -2m plus 2 minus 3. Inequality, fish hooks. No distributive property. I can combine +2 and -3. I have one extra negative, so I'm going to have a -1 with no partner. -2m here, 9 here. I want to get -2m alone, so I'm going to add 1 to both sides. Awfully good to us. These are all coming out as whole numbers, no fractions so far, but I'm sure something's going to get crazy here soon. Divide both sides by -2 to get that m alone. Oh, that random rule tells me when I divide by a negative number, I better flip my symbol. So now I have -5 here, and I have m here, but darn it, that variable's on the right-hand side, so I'm going to flip the whole thing over, and therefore I'm going to flip the inequality symbol over as well. I will start graphing this at -5 on a number line. My circle is going to be solid because it can be equal to -5, and it can also be, yay, greater than, which means it could be 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Inequalities have a lot of different solutions, unlike equations that typically just have one. Okay, that was number 5. Number 6 is -3 minus 6 times a quantity 4x plus 6 is greater than -111. Line, fish hooks, RR, remind me of the random rule. I have distributive property. Now be careful, we're going to distribute a -6 to every stinking thing in the parentheses. So -6 times +4x is -24x, and -6 times +6 is -36. Then I'm going to bring down my -3 because I didn't do anything with him. And on the right I have -111. Now I have 3 negatives and I have 36 negatives, so I'm going to combine those. Nope, no positives to partner up with, so that's 39 negatives minus 24x is greater than negative 111. I'm going to get 24x alone, so I'm going to add 39 to both sides. And these are going to cancel out, and I'm left with negative 24x is greater than, now be careful here, you got a whole bunch of negatives and not as many positives. So you're going to have a bunch of negatives with no partners. How many? Well, if I subtract these two numbers, it's going to tell me how many negatives I have left over, because these positives, these 39 positives, are going to grab 39 negatives and partner up with them. So how many negatives are going to be left? Well, 111 minus 39 is 11 minus 9 is 2, and 10 minus 3 is 7. So I'm going to have 72 negatives, because there's more negatives than positives. I want to get x alone, so I'm going to divide by negative 24. There's that pesky little RR, but it's a good thing he's there, because I'm dividing both sides by a negative number. So I better flip my little friend around. And I'm left with x here, and over here a negative divided by a negative is a positive 3. So when I graph it, I start at 3. It's an open dot because x cannot be equal to 3. It can only be less than 3. And since my variable is on the left-hand side and less than goes this way, that's what my solution looks like. Great. Okay, that was number 6. Number 7. 6 minus 4 times the quantity 6n plus 7 is greater than or equal to 122. I'm going to put my line down the middle, my fish hooks. I have to distribute a negative 4 to everything in the parentheses. And so negative 4 times 6n is negative 24n. And negative 4 times positive 7 is negative 28. And don't forget the 6 that we haven't done anything with. We're just doing our distributive property first. I'm going to combine 28 negatives and 6 positives. Since I have more negatives than positives, that's a positive 6. It's going to be negative 22 minus 24n, and I have my 122 over here. I want to get negative 24n alone, so I got to get rid of negative 22 by adding 22 to both sides. These cancel out, and I have negative 24n. I forgot to write random rule. Shame on me. And over here I'm going to add all these positives together, and I'm going to get 144. And so far it's greater than or equal to, but I'm dividing both sides by a negative 24, so I can isolate that in. So you know what that means. I'm going to flip over my little friend. So it's going to become less than or equal to, I have one n on this side, and a positive divided by a negative is a negative, let's see, I think it's 6. 120 and 20, yep, negative 6. So we're going to graph this beginning at negative 6, and it's going to be solid, because not only can n be less than negative 6, it can be equal to, and less than means I'm going to head to the left, which coincidentally is the same way that this arrow is going, but only when the variable's on the left-hand side. That was number 7. Number 8. Negative 138 is greater than or equal to negative 6 times 6b minus 7. Okay. fish hooks. This time I'm going to be a really good girl and remember my RR. And I'm going to do my distributive property, and I'm going to remember that this 6 is a negative and this 7 is a negative. So negative 6 times 6b is negative 36b, and negative 6 times negative 7 is positive 42, and I have a negative 138 on the left-hand side. And I need to get negative 36b alone, so I have to get rid of 42. So I'm going to do the opposite, which is to subtract it. These cancel out. I'm left with negative 36b, and these are all negatives, so I'm just going to put them all together, and nobody's going to partner up. They're just going to be hanging out all miserable together. So this is 180 negatives, and I'm going to divide both sides by a negative 36. So since I'm dividing by a negative, I'm going to flip my symbol. There's my little RR friend. So instead of greater than or equal to, now it's less than or equal to. And my B is isolated. Negative divided by a negative is a positive, and there are 55 negative 5 36s in 180, and it's positive 5. And I flip my symbol because I divided, but I want my B on the left-hand side, so I'm going to flip the whole stinking thing over. So I started out with greater than or equal to. I turned it around because I divided by a negative, and now I'm going to turn around again because I want B on the left-hand side. And when I graph this precious little inequality, I begin at 5, and it's a closed dot, and B can be greater than or equal to, because look at the last time we flipped it. So that means B could be 5, 6, 7, 8, 20, 900, 8 million, whatever. But nothing less than 5. Okay, let's look at number 9. Number 9 says 167 is less than 6 plus 7 times 2 minus 7r. Okay, line, fish hook, random rule, distribute a positive 7. Go ahead and bring that 6 down. We're not going to mess with it right now. 7 times 2 is positive 14. Positive 7 times negative 7r is negative 49r. We have 167 over here. Combine 6 and 14 and you get 20. And over here we get 167. I want negative 49r alone. I got to get rid of these 20 positives, so I'm going to do the inverse, which is subtract. 20 positives and 20 negatives cancel out. I have negative 49r. And on this side I have more positives than negatives, so I'm going to subtract, and my answer is going to be positive. If I divide by, oh, look what I did. Look what I did. It's less than, and I wrote equal to. That's why I put fish hooks on my line, so I don't make that goofy mistake. Divide both sides by negative 49. I'm going to flip my inequality symbol because I'm dividing by a negative number, and I have r over here, and on the other side a positive divided by a negative is a negative, and I believe this is negative 3. That's really fabulous, and that is my answer, except that I want my variable on the left to make it easier to graph. So I have to flip the whole thing over, including the symbol. So once again, it started out as less than, flipped it, and made it greater than when I divided both sides by a negative, and then flipped it and made it less than again when I put my variable on the left-hand side. So I have a negative 3.